Do your end users always, and I mean always, without exception, work on company-owned devices and IT-approved apps? I didn't think so. So my next question is, how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password has an answer to this question: Extended Access Management. 1Password Extended Access Management helps you secure every sign-in for every app on every device because it solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. Check it out at securityweekly.com/1password. ThreatLocker implements a least privileged approach to cybersecurity, blocking every executable unless specifically authorized by your team. This methodology mitigates ransomware, supply chain attacks, and zero-day exploits. It ensures 24/7, 365 protection for your organization. To learn more about how ThreatLocker can help prevent known and unknown threats in your digital environment, safeguard your data and operations from threat actors, and align your organization with compliance frameworks, visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Dani Woolf joins us today to talk about researcher qualities that marketing teams should adopt. Dani did demand gen and digital marketing for over 14 years at high-growth B2B tech startups. She pivoted into cybersecurity in 2018 and thought, wow, this place is weird. She created Audience First, a modern customer research agency, as well as the WTF Did I Just Read podcast, which is very entertaining and useful and eye-opening. And more recently co-founded CyberNest. Welcome to the show, Dani.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. I will add a small correction. Did not co-found CyberNest per se. I'm VP marketing at CyberNest, but co-founded a new division that I haven't yet launched at CyberNest, and I'm really excited to talk about hopefully today.
Is that CyberSynapse?
Correct.
Okay, excellent. Sorry about that. Oh,
no,
right.
It's all good.
So yeah, there are so many things we could talk about, Dani. I enjoy often. I love the kind of live on LinkedIn crowd. You know, we used to promote live to LinkedIn, but yeah, I've whenever you schedule them, tends to be a good time for me because I often jump on there and jump into the comments. And so many things we could talk about, but yeah, I love this thing that you put together here where. And I'll have to see if I can get this image into the show notes for this 10 security researcher qualities marketers should adopt, one pager that you've got here.
Yeah.
And
happy to share it afterwards, by the way, for anybody. So FYI.
Yeah. And people who are listening and not watching, basically it's a rubric. It's 3 columns. There's the quality that we're talking about, and what it means for security researchers and how it could be useful for marketers also. Basically doing some alignment between things a security researcher does that also kind of aligns with stuff that marketers maybe don't do, but should.
Yeah, 100%. And by the way, Adrian, I'd love for you to validate some of those, factors or variables that I've plugged in there. Those were largely from I took those largely from experience working with security researchers internally for vendors and just speaking to them, doing qualitative research. And I was like, wow, these are some of the most curious people that I know. Some of the most analytic. They think about systems. They think about feedback. They think about how to dig in deep. And as a marketer, I'm like, why aren't we adopting some of those traits? Like, why aren't we massaging those traits? That's something that as marketers, people who assess the market, research the market, try to persuade people need as the foundation elements, right? And so, we can dig in and talk about why, maybe we don't have those traits ingrained in us as we, work for some of these security startups and tech companies. So.
I mean, just the OSINT piece of it is such an important piece. I feel like for both marketers and security professionals. And like Andy Ellis used to have a rant where when he was a CISO for Akamai, where he was the CISO for 20 years, people try and sell him some kind of AWS product, It was like, yeah, I wish you would just do some research, and like there are tools out there that would tell you if my company uses AWS, where you could just
Right.
plug in the name of the company and it basically tell you if there's any AWS being used there. Because rather than just ranting, that's kind of Andy's mo is he'll actually try to educate at the same time. And there's all kinds of opportunities like that. Like I guess some of it's confusing. Like people look at my LinkedIn and I have so many things going on. A B-sides, community stuff that I get paid for, stuff that I don't get paid for. That it's hard to figure out like what's your byline? I was recently quoted in an article, and she went with board member of security tinkers, which is basically like a Slack, right? And so it was kind of funny for me to see that, but I kind of can't blame them. It can be hard to figure out who do I talk to at an organization. Are they uh, you know um, do they fit the profile that
Yeah.
we're looking to sell to? Yeah.
And that's where, like, when you think about some of the traits, that's where that critical thinking and deep diving and persistence comes into play. Like, you can't just, look at things at face value. You can't just like look at things and then give up, right? And assume, right, that that's the situation, right? That's the status quo. And so, when I look at some of the experiences I had with security researchers and reading, their reports and their analyses, I'm like, wow, okay, they really go deep. They really have this continuous assessment and learning trait that I found, super compelling. And as a marketer who's trying to connect with a buyer or connect with a practitioner or even, have a simple conversation starter, those traits are so valuable because we just can't assume from what's online, right? Um, so yeah, that's so how would you, so if somebody, just posing a question back at you, Adrian, if somebody if somebody was interested in getting in touch with you, they landed on your LinkedIn, like what are the steps you think they should take to get to know you better and start a conversation?
Yeah, I think a lot of what you need to know is right there on my LinkedIn. It's pretty up to date. It's pretty descriptive. A Google search would tell you a lot more. You'd see the stuff I'm currently doing. I don't know that you need to do a whole lot more than that. Like you know, sure, send me a cold LinkedIn DM on LinkedIn. Like I'll respond to you and tell you if I'm the right guy or not. So I try and be helpful with that and say, sorry, I'm not a lead. It's just I'm independent. It's just me. I'm not hiring software developers. Like I'll respond with that. And then I just had to block somebody the other day because I responded with that 3 times in a row, and
Oh, wow.
they kept hitting me up, trying to, like you're not even reading the replies here. Come on. Like
Adrian, you know the address, WTF, right? Danny at WTF.
yeah.
Did I just
Yeah.
read.com? Just send it
Yeah,
over.
I could send that over. Absolutely. That's one I could send over.
I get it all the time too. Since
Yeah.
joining my current company, I can't tell you how many demand gen focused requests I get. There is nothing ever in my history of work that suggests that I am in demand gen. Nothing. Absolutely
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
try to also be helpful because I was in sales a zillion years ago. And so I write back and say, thank you. I am not in demand gen. And then they come back with, will you tell me who I can contact? And I'm like, no, no,
See,
I can't
that
do that in good conscience. I can't do that. But it's
yeah.
so ingrained to be like, and I think this is, I'm going to shut up in a minute, Adrian, because I know you have a million questions. But one of the things I love to get to, Danny, is how did we get to this place where sales and marketing, because I think they're super intertwined, have gotten to, I just want to push the easy button? Because I think that's the problem with most marketing teams. in cybersecurity. I just want the easy button. Don't want to have to learn about security. I'll just have my researcher or my product person or my whomever tell me what to write, and then I'll make it pretty. That's not marketing. So,
yeah,
how did we get here, and why is there this notion of the quote easy button?
How much time do we have, by the way?
3 days.
Not enough.
Oh, gosh.
Not enough.
Not enough time, and not enough alcohol in this this bottle. Before we get to that question, which I think Adrian, you and I were kind of pinging each other in the morning and talking about counterpoints on what is the issue and why are we in this state. But Katie, to your point,
I have those loaded up and ready if you want.
Yeah. We're ready to go. I have my, I think 3 or something. But Katie, to your point, there's this annoying tactic, right? An executive or somebody moves jobs and changes their LinkedIn profile, and then boom, like those SDRs are automatically reaching out and sending you, and you're the right fit, and you're the right fit for our product, and we can do X, Y, Z. And they're not, undergoing this scenario analysis. Like, do you really think that somebody who's new at the job, who just started, right? Let's assume that they changed their LinkedIn profile a month after they started, whatever, or most of the time it's the day of or the day after. They're not onboarded yet. They don't know what's going on. They haven't yet assessed fully what's going on internally. Like, why are you even doing that, right? So that's where this scenario analysis kind of like, from a researcher's standpoint, like, you got to understand what's going on in their world before you even attempt to have a conversation. That's what's critical. But yeah, the question, like, why have we gotten to this? Let's press the easy button and let things sometimes go on autopilot too. I have my assumptions, but I don't know who wants to go first. By the way.
Yeah, well, I'll just throw out a quick story. There was a vendor I worked for where the CEO was convinced, and I don't know where she got this. There's maybe a business book or something, but was convinced of this 8 touch points thing. That takes 8 touch points before.
I've heard 7.
By the way, that's like 2000.
And so our SDRs, are doing this 8 touch point thing. And I was like, you know what 8 touch points sounds like to me? Sounds like harassment is what that sounds like.
I think it's more, which sounds already stalker mode, but it depends on people too. Like, sometimes, by the way, with outreach for me, sometimes I get it after 1-2 touches just on LinkedIn. I don't do email largely. My only email that I do is just to people who have opted in to hear from me. Right. I don't do any cold outreach email. I just, bring people into the newsletter. Whoever wants to get the value from the newsletter, they hear from me once a week. That's it. But it just depends on the people. That's why that research is so critical. Understanding, who it is you're trying to get to. Some people are more active on LinkedIn. That's their space. Some people, you can text them. Some people go to events. That's the touch point, right? Yeah. Sometimes it's a blend, right? So it's that's why it's more than 8 touch points, by the way, because it's largely a blend of channels to really kind of penetrate in the conversation. And the problem is that these frameworks, 8 touch points, you're going to get it. Like, statistically, you're going to get it. That's the issue, is that people are subscribing to that because it feels good. Yeah. It's tangible. Like, oh, I can show this to my boss.
Burn a whole lot of bridges in the process, but it works.
Yeah, like that's something that I can show to my boss and say, this is what we're going to try. And the stats show it. Let's believe the third party intermediaries. Let's not believe ourselves, and let's not try it. Right. So that's one of the issues is these people from different verticals, from different, working with different audiences, give these quote unquote frameworks that have worked years ago. Maybe we're in a different spot now. We have tech overload. Like, we have so many channels. Like, it's not the same as it was 5 years ago, as it was 10 years ago.
Phone calls burned. Email
Yeah.
burned, unusable for a CISO today. Like they're
Unless you
making
know them.
rules just to clear this. Right. Yeah, and I mean that's the problem is like it does end up all being about relationships, and how do
Well,
you make those relationships? And it's so most of the vendors that I've worked for spent a good amount of time trying to figure out ICP verticals that they're going to sell to. I did work for a company that was kind of the flip side of that. Instead of going after Fortune 1000 and 5 to 6 digit ACVs, they were product-led growth. So that was thanks to his entirely bootstrapped, low-cost product. Basically, really kind of went out and found a category and a niche in the market where they could build a product where it was difficult to justify not buying it, at that price point. Like you can start at $5,000 with Thinkst, and for a lot of people,
mm-hmm.
they don't even have to get permission to spend that kind of money. So made it easy to sell a lot of products. Demonstrated well. 30-minute call. That was the usually from first touch point to them buying the product was a week, maybe 2 weeks. So that's one extreme of the market, right? But that's not most of the market. Most of the market, you've got these, sales cycles months or years even.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. But I'd argue even sometimes, that PLG approach, that's hard to do successfully, in my opinion. That takes a lot of cycles of testing. And so that validation and the feedback and working with the customers and talking to people and building relationships and again, getting the feedback over and over again, I think until you get to the point where you have those conversion paths on point, you're needing to establish relationships with your ideal customer, with people who can, who can give you information and their lens of the world so that, you're more successful in the future. I know because I've tried to go through the PLG approach and it's hard. But yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of ingredients that have to be right there. And that was one of the things I was interested in when I went to work there. And I learned you really do need a Haroon here. You need a good leader of the company that already has some good connections to get things rolling, and very detail oriented. His one of his mottos is always sweat the small stuff, and you have to pick the right category. And he decided to pick a category where they could build a product from the ground up. They built a physical product. They were shipping physical product to people.
Wow.
With a bootstrapped company. So they kind of and because they were so focused, I think they made that work, and they didn't need to grow faster in South Africa. Didn't have huge expenses on their side, so profit margins were less of an issue. And that's actually one of the things we're going to be talking about in the news segment today is how they do security for their own stuff. As a vendor, shared responsibility. They do a lot of stuff that you don't see other vendors doing because it's more expensive to do it like that. But again, they're not as worried about the margins work for them on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, how does it get there? I think a lot of, we have to be speaking to leadership here, right? Because if an SDR is listening to this, or somebody in demand gen or go to market or something like that, none of it matters if you can't convince your CEO that this is the right way to go, because they're going to say, nope, we're doing 8 touch points.
Well, so that's the hard part too, is communicating different approaches to stakeholders. A lot of the times, you have SDRs, demand gen marketers, sometimes even CMOs who, butt heads with the founders because they have a set course that they need because largely these companies are backed by investors, and there's a way that they want things done because they need to appease to the investor profits, right? And so, automatically the perception of that founder or CEO and the board is like, we need quantity so that we can get quantity, right? Over, well, we're going to focus on maybe slower growth from a numbers perspective of human beings, but ultimately that approach, in my opinion, is going to give you that hockey stick or incremental growth, right? That's needed versus flood everything at the top of the funnel with people who don't know you, but you're kind of seeing, unpredictable growth. So I think that the problem is the reason why we got to this, press the easy button is the frameworks, is the mindset, is the goals, right? Our goal is to exit, or our goal is to appease the investors, versus we need to help the very people we're trying to sell to, people over profit, right? There are, we could double click into a lot of different issues here, but those are some of the things that I'm seeing over the years, and also experienced working for high growth startups, both in security and also, other tech companies in the space. So
yeah, there's, because there's not enough, I feel like there's not enough transparency on the buyer side. I think a lot of vendors don't know how easy it is for them to get blacklisted for bad behavior. So
I'm going to push back. Sorry. I'm going to push back. There's a lot more transparency than there was 4 years ago. Let's
sure.
I think folks are a lot more vocal
you're bringing
about it
some
because
of that,
they're fed up.
Right?
Well, yeah,
that 100.
I might, 100%. But I'm seeing a lot more, and that might be actually subjective because I just do a lot more research on it than I did it than before. But I do see a lot more buyers being more vocal about what to do and what not to do, disconnected from what we're doing at Audience First, at the CyberNest, and WTF. So, sorry I cut you off there, but I was really. What was it? Hot and crunchy that we talked about? I was hot and crunchy. Yeah. I needed to get it going.
Go ahead, Katie.
I was just going to say she got all fired up and it was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good sign that we're touching on the right topics here. But yeah, I used to say, it's amazing. I can find 10,000 reviews of a $1 product, but I can't find any for $1 million product, right? It's really difficult. And I know of companies that have gotten bought with 0 customers, or maybe only a few design partners, with less than 10 even customers in a technical sense, which is amazing to me. But yeah, in the last segment we were talking about the value of having a trial, having some kind of freemium product, something people can put their hands on and validate. Yeah, this is a thing. It exists. It actually works. It actually does what it says. Because for a lot of folks, it's just not worth. You don't have to be PLG per se. You don't have to flip your whole marketing program to do this. But give me something. I don't want to be 10 meetings in and realize that you've bullshitted half of what you promised me, right?
Yeah, that's risky for the organization too. You're bringing on a product that's largely going to have to integrate with a lot of different security tools and systems. You have to have that that POV or POC ready to go and work hand in hand with them throughout the process, even if it's clunky. That's part of the process.
Let me hit you with this, Dani, 'cause I'm curious your perspective on this. Something I've hit up in several of the startups I've worked for is no, we don't want to put a demo on a website because then our competitors will steal our features. Have you ever seen that be a legit concern?
Do you know?
As I get swallowed by my hair.
Yeah, getting swallowed by your hair. That's how I would feel when I would be told that from engineering internally. I think
we can't
it's
show a screenshot. What's going on?
Yeah, that's such false assumption there. If the competitor wants to see the product, they're gonna see it. You know what I
They'll
mean?
find
They're
a way.
going to,
Yeah.
they'll buy it sometimes. You know what
And
I
if
mean?
Oh,
your
really?
Yeah,
product
Yeah.
is
Katie.
so flimsy that it's going to fall over from somebody seeing a demo, you've got
Or they can
Yeah.
way
steal a
bigger
feature and you're done. Yeah.
problems. Yeah.
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 Well, I
Yeah.
mean,
You've got,
you're also buying the company, not the product, too, to some
yeah.
extent,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, how good is the
Mm-hmm.
customer success? How good is the support? Like, I know it's not going to be perfect at everything. How good are you
Yeah.
at executing on your roadmap? There's so much of what I'm buying as a CISO, as a buyer, that isn't a feature in the product.
Yeah. Yeah.
How are you
100%. And
growing? Your roadmap, is it things that align with my business objectives? Sometimes we talked about this in the last segment too, feature parity among similar groups of
mm-hmm.
technologies. It's just there. So sometimes it's, hey, my company's going this way and your company's going this way, so it's not a fit. And it has nothing to do with the
Yeah.
technical functionality. You're
Yeah.
not going
Are
to
you planning
win
to exit to
100.
Broadcom?
Right. You're not going to win 100%. You're not even going to win 90% of deals. Like, just, I mean, you have to have a
You know,
practical and strategic approach. And going back to you need to build relationships so you know these things.
yeah, 100%. You know, in interviewing, hundreds of security practitioners over the past couple of years, one thing that really stood out and emerges in the conversations regularly across many of the folks that I've spoken to is, yes, there's the product, and sometimes there are some really good and sexy products, but in many of the cases, the companies that pair great customer service, pair value creation throughout the whole customer journey, not just once they've handed over the check, but after the fact, when I don't know if we can curse on this episode, but when
Absolutely. Yeah.
the when shit hits the fan, are they going to show up, or are they
Yeah.
going to ghost me? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Some of the best customers that I have didn't give me money yet, but I've worked with them throughout issues. And then, we have a great deal and we continue working together and have even more opportunity together. So it should be bidirectional. Like, it shouldn't be, transactional. And I always say to people, like, B2B, and especially in security, it's very emotional. There are a lot of factors, intrinsic factors involved that impact people in their lives more so than other, I think, tech spaces. So that's why this human element and these, research qualities, security research qualities, I think, is so important for go-to-market professionals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to that point, say what you will about the big CrowdStrike incident, but they, CEO was out there apologizing on news channels. They made as much data as available publicly when they had it. They built tools to help people recover from it. I think their response was pretty impressive. I mean, we can continue to have conversations on whether or not it should have happened at all, but I kind of want to see a company, before buying from a company, I want to see them in that kind of situation, because it can happen to anybody. I want to see if they've got the customers back.
Oh yeah, 100%. That transparency, I think, was important, critical, a good move. I frankly was taken aback and really not impressed by a lot of the flack they got from people. You're bitching and complaining, but nobody. There were a lot of people who did not provide an alternative solution. Like, you're just throwing shade, and it could happen to you
Yeah.
tomorrow. Come on. This got
Yeah.
so much publicity because it was CrowdStrike. They're one of the largest players, right? So
It amazed me. A lot of the people throwing flack around don't understand the difference between EDR and antivirus,
yeah,
and you kind of conflating the terms, which, first of all, like, yeah, I understand everybody's an expert, the moment this stuff starts to happen, but there's a lot of nuance there. I covered endpoint security for a while as an industry analyst, and around the time that next gen AV was a thing, and CrowdStrike and Cylance were just starting to look like they could displace Symantec and McAfee. So I got front row seat for all that, and and it is a really tough thing. This is back when Bromium was blue screening stuff left and right. There are a lot of products who are deep into the kernel and causing problems. So, there's a long history of this that goes back, to the 90s almost. Where people are really questioning, should you have that level of access in there? So it's not a new conversation. You hear everybody talking about it as it's somehow new, and they should have never let this happen. But it's not like they came up with this architecture on a whim, right? They didn't get to uh, you know what's their valuation, like 100 billion, by just deciding one day to integrate with the Windows kernel. So yeah, um, I wonder, with the time we have left, should we go through these 10 qualities?
Yeah,
Should we
let's
kind
do
of
it.
go down the list?
Yeah,
All
and by the
right.
way, if there's anything you need to, you think we should cut or add, let me know, because this I
Yeah.
might put out again into the wild.
Okay.
Um,
Y-
cool.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't gone through. We're going to go through them live, and some of them I haven't really looked and thought about yet. I've kind of just kind of spot checked a few of them. Um, but yeah. So at the top we've got deep diving and persistence. Um, so yeah, I've got ADHD, so persistence is actually appreciated on my part. Sometimes I want to buy something, I want to do a thing, so I actually appreciate when people check in with me, because yes, there is a good chance I'm going to get distracted, forget about something. So to some extent, I like that, but the deep diving is the thing. Like, I've come across a lot of sales people who do that deep dive, and even if it's something simple, like before you called somebody, you checked a few things. It doesn't even
Hmm.
have to be huge. Just if you can get across that you actually did a little bit of homework, I feel like that goes a really, really long way. People really
Hmm.
appreciate that because they're getting hit by so many people who, again, hitting up Katie for demand gen, hitting me up to hire programmers, like, come on, like it'd take you half a second of looking at my LinkedIn and know you got the wrong person.
Right.
So I like that one.
Cool. Cr-
Uh,
critical critical thinking. How about that? That's something we need more of these days, I feel like.
I just realized Katie can't see this, so let me try and copy this and get it over to Katie.
As you do copy that critical thinking, I have thoughts and I haven't even seen it. I think it's incredibly important, and we have so much, oh, I just read this, or oh, I
Hmm.
just heard this from someone. And
Reactive.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah, and they don't put thought into what they see, read, hear, whatever. They just simply take it at face value. And there is a lot of value in thinking about things multi-directionally, and that's been you know that's been a thorn in my side for a while, that people just sort of repeat what they hear and don't say, but
Yeah.
why? I used to work with a guy, and for the months I thought he was really dumb, because we'd get into meetings and he'd say, why? Can you explain it again?
Hmm.
Can you explain it again? And after about 3 months, I realized he was actually the smartest guy in the room, because he was trying to make sure that the people explaining it knew how they were explaining it. And when he would just say, I don't understand, can you explain it again? He was getting them to think critically about what they were saying. And so the rest of us in the room, boil it down to the basics, folks.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, I just learned a thing.
Yeah. Why is my favorite question, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's yeah, uncovers non-obvious insights from customer data is what you've got under critical. It's critical thinking and skepticism. And skepticism is kind of my
Yes.
thing, is part of my personal brand, because there are a lot of fake stats out there. And I've gone after some of those, and yeah, it's there's just a lot of fakeness, that you have to kind of dig through,
Mm.
and it just seems like we're in an industry, where we should be somewhat above that. So I hate it when I see marketers using some of those fake stats, kind of doubling down on stuff that just, especially when it kind of leans into the FUD area, so, it's nice when I see folks lean in the other direction.
Yeah.
72.6% of marketers.
Well, and again, all this, by the way, all this stuff listed here, it's hard to do. That's why many don't do it. And that's why that easy button, majority press the easy button, Katie, to your point, right? This is a hard thing to shift towards. So I always like to look at this document and say, okay, well, am I covering those, qualities? Am I working on that today? Maybe it's not great, right? But overall, am I massaging those qualities as a marketer? Systems thinking too, I think, is that third one. From a marketer's perspective, recognizing the components from a MarTech perspective and all the things that you've got going on internally in the organization, but also recognizing those intricate elements of the customer experience too. How do those systems work for the customer? So,
yeah, that's so let's see, what do we have next here? We've got systems thinking,
and scenario analysis.
So recognizes intricate elements of customer experience. So help us understand what you're thinking about there with systems thinking, the customer experience. Is that just breaking down
systems thinking? Yeah, like how do things work? How do things work for each customer, right? From a customer, like, or each customer segment, right? How do the interactions in their organization work? How do the interactions with the tech work? How do the processes work for the customers, right? We need to understand and assess the people, process, and technology of our customers in order for us to fit our people, processes, and technologies for the customer, right? So there's a bunch of systems thinking that needs to go on. It's our own internal assessment, it's the customer assessment, and it's the market assessment. So if we're not doing that, then how are we able to align products and services to the people we're trying to persuade? And it kind of, aligns also to know your customer, know their situation, know how things operate. And also it kind of ties into scenario analysis too. Like, we need to be able to understand how their journey works in different situations too, right? We need to be able to forecast or anticipate what will happen if, something like CrowdStrike or Change Healthcare happens, right? We need to kind of understand those different experiences in order to better predict how to behave, right? Or help, right? Same goes for, security researchers. You got to do the same with regards to adversaries. You got to kind of predict how they're going to move too in order to figure out how you're going to move, right? So
I feel like a lot of this you could consolidate. I feel like systems thinking and continuous learning kind of go together. There's like know the customer, know the industry. There have been a lot of times that I've talked to folks on the sales side, and they really don't understand that customer experience. They can't empathize, they can't put themselves in the customer's shoes, and all that's fine. But there are resources where you can get that stuff. You can listen to podcasts. You can talk to customers, folks in the industry. You can go to conferences, and you can. The Cyber for Builders, Ross Helleluch's book, I think does an excellent job at this. The first couple of chapters are all welcome to cybersecurity. It's a weird place. Here's how it works, and he does a very good job of kind of catching you up, getting you up to speed on some of those key things that you need to know, particularly the state. Like, here's how the CISO is going to feel when you send that cold email. Like, here's the likely outcome from that. He does a really good job of kind of cutting to the chase there. So I would suggest first couple chapters of that book for those
Where
two.
is it? I got it up here. By the way, I'm gonna toot on my horn. I did contribute to a chapter there, so I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
Which got me excited to write my own book. So he owes me a chapter as well, and maybe you too, Adrian and Katie. So
Absolutely, yeah. I contributed a little bit to the chapter on how to destroy a startup.
Oh yes, right. I didn't get to that one. I jumped through the book because it's so good. There's just so many different
It's well designed
viewpoints
for
in
that.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not a wrong way to use that book. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not linear. You just got to kind of go through different things that are relevant for you in that moment. Yes. So shout out to Ross.
So yeah, you got to understand your customer. You got to keep up with what's going on in the market, not just so you can ambulance chase, but just to be aware of what's going on. Scenario analysis maps customer journeys, anticipating needs and pain points. Yeah, I feel like a lot of these systems thinking, scenario analysis, continuous learning, I feel like these are parts of kind of a cohesive whole of just knowing what's going on, just being able, these are things you need to have just have a conversation with somebody in the cybersecurity industry. If you can't do these things, it's going to be an awkward conversation. Maybe you default to golf or something like that. Like there's a lot of things that sellers do to make up for a lack of this kind of skill and knowledge. And I don't think it works anymore. I don't think it works well in cybersecurity either. Maybe with certain customers, but with folks really trying to get things done and their time is very valuable to them, I think you have to throw all that out and you have to actually talk pain points and what you can do for them.
Yeah, 100%.
Relies on feedback loops. I love feedback loops. Our industry doesn't have many of them, and it needs them everywhere. So I like feedback importance is the next one here. Emphasizes feedback to understand the efficacy of interventions. Yeah, I mean, if you're not feeding data back into what works, what doesn't work, you're just kind of doomed to make a lot of mistakes. Sometimes without feedback loops, you don't even know that you've made the mistake. You don't even necessarily know, like, okay, I did this thing and they never get back in touch with me. So, how are you going to process that? Was that your fault? Was it them? Was it you?
It doesn't even have to be mistakes, right? It can be as simple as A/B testing.
Somebody doesn't renew and you don't know why, right?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the classic one there, churn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, understanding how things are resonating with other people takes a lot of time and patience, and we're so quick to get things out to market these days. We're so quick to want more likes, more shares, more comments, that we don't think about the differences in how people think and process information. And that is so key for marketers.
Yeah.
I might have an idea about how a campaign goes, but then I come to you, Adrian, and you have a different view. Doesn't make my view wrong, doesn't make yours right. And then we go to Dani, and Dani says, well, I have this different perspective. Again, not necessarily right or wrong. You have different audiences, different brains, and things are processed differently.
Yeah, so I found in the industry, there are completely different definitions for terms where a lot of people assume when you say pen testing, everybody's now thinking the same thing. Nope. Some of them are thinking network pen testing. Some of them are thinking web app pen testing. Like there's I did a survey on this once for a talk I gave back in 2017, and I found there's like half a dozen different variations of what people think when you say that term.
Mm-hmm.
I found it. Something.
I was gonna say I find it sometimes alarming how so many people are just take feedback so negatively. If anything, getting feedback, especially from a buyer, right?
Right.
That's like a privilege because a lot of the times they won't say anything, and if you're getting like, an alarming message back saying, "Oh, we're never going to do business with you again because blah 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 blah," that happened. Real true story happened.
Yeah.
Because one of the AEs called the CISO on their private cell phone. So I had to go back and work with the CMO to fix the issue and talk to them and kind of, understand, okay, what went wrong? Like, yeah, obviously we knew that, you don't call someone on their personal
That takes us
cell
down
phone.
to ethical considerations.
Yes, 100% ethical considerations, which again, there's not enough time or alcohol to talk about today, but yes, 100%. And I think the big thing that hopefully we still have time to touch on is collaboration too, like the ability to collaborate, not just within your department, but with competitors, partners, and across the departments, right? Which I think is a pain for both security organizations and also go-to-market teams equally. It's
like
universal.
I'm about to tell a ghost story.
So. Yes. Oh.
It's starting to get dark here, so I had to pull out the key light. But yeah, we'll have to close out with collaboration. We're running a little bit long here, but yeah, let's hit that. Yeah, because that's again, I think that comes back to the you're not allowed to share anything with anybody because our competitors might steal our secrets. That's I think something you've got to get past. And I've seen direct competitors work together and even collaborate on stuff, and it's like if you're talking about MITRE, the EDR testing, stuff like that, that's when an independent party does it. But it's interesting when you see direct competitors collaborating on stuff too. But I feel like we don't see enough of that.
Yeah, 100%. I think it is getting better though. Like now, the more that the more that I'm involved with, these events, right? If you're just taking cybersecurity vendors, for example, everybody is at each other's throats. But there are a lot of, scenarios and situations where I see teams, direct and indirect competitors, working together, sponsoring together, running campaigns together. So I think it's getting better. I think overall, looking at all these qualities holistically, I think more and more go-to-market professionals, security professionals too, are getting on board with the value of being a space and not an industry, if that makes sense. Being a community and not a machine that's just cold and there's no emotion to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's interesting because there are companies, I feel like companies do better when they promote that. And there's a lot of different ways to promote that. You can have user conferences, you can have, like a forum just for customers, and you can just show up and sponsor B-sides, and talk to, super cheap to do that. I run a B-side, so just throwing that out there. But it's and that's a tough thing that we get. Like we get people wanting to sponsor our B-sides that are looking for leads, and list of attendees, and that's one of the cardinal sins of B-sides. Like you don't do that. You don't hand out the attendee list. You don't sell speaker slots. They have to kind of understand it's more of an investment in the community than a place you're going to get leads from. And some vendors don't like we try and explain it, and they just don't grok it. It doesn't. Yeah. They don't get it. They're too short-sighted, I think.
Yes.
Is how I would think about that. So, yeah, I think a lot of these things on this list, I think it'd be interesting to go over this list again. With kind of thought of like how many of these things are essential and how many of these things are nice to have, because I think you could show this to some vendors, and some of the things they would label as nice to have, I would label as kind of essential, like the feedback loops.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like some might not do it until like Series C or Series D or something like that. I'm like, nah, you need this right out of the gate.
Yeah. My hope is that all of this is essential and continuous, by the way, which is a key word. It's not like one and done. People change, our position in the market changes, buyers change, technology changes. So yeah.
All right, well, good stuff. Dani, thank you so much for joining us on Enterprise Security Weekly today. This is a lot of fun. I would love to there's a bunch of stuff we didn't even touch on today. So we'll have to have you back on at some point.
I'm here. You know where to find me.
Absolutely. And we'll be right back in a few moments with the weekly enterprise news.